and then they saw me in a bra, and that was it.
What's going on, Pearl Jam nerds? You're listening to Single Podcast Theory. I'm Brad Lyons.
And I'm Brad Blazek.
And we're back with part 2 of our 2-part series about PJ20. What's going on, Brad B?
Oh, not much. How are you?
I'm great.
That's awesome.
It's been a good week. Busy week. Yeah, man. Can't really complain, other than the weather being a little weird.
Oh, my God.
Did you guys have all the tornado-ish weather yesterday?
Yeah. No, it was just rained all day.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah, we had like super crazy wind and lightning, thunder, all that good stuff. And
now I think it was.
Now it feels like it's winter again. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's so cold today.
Yeah, man.
It sucks. And yesterday it was like 80, or Friday it was like 80.
No, and it's supposed to get back into the 80s by like Tuesday, I think. So, whatever, man. This will be the last cold snap here in the South, I think.
I hope so. Good God.
All right, so yeah, this is going to be PJ20 Part 2, but we've got some emails to get through. So why don't we start off like we usually do with this week's Pearl Jam story time.
Good evening. This is Storytellers. We are here to tell stories.
We just have friends up here that are listening to stories.
Have I got a little story for you?
This is the true story.
All right, who you got, Brad B?
I've got Jim. I don't know how to say his last name. Doya?
Yeah, I would say...
Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I think it was a good effort.
Yeah, Jim.
Jimmy S.
Yeah, there you go. Brad's. I came across the podcast when performing a generic Pearl Jam search on iTunes. I have an appetite for Pearl Jam content that never seems to be satisfied. I gave it a go, and I'm glad that I did. Your varying backgrounds and undeniable chemistry make for a great listening experience. I find myself laughing, participating in your arguments, which must make me look mad, gaining new insights, revisiting songs based on your conversations, and garnering a greater appreciation for the Pearl Jam community, their stories, interpretations, etc. You've made my work commute tolerable. I love the time-to-time detours and insights into your personal lives. Starting out, I wanted you to skip the email section and get to the task at hand. However, I've grown to love that part, emails and story time. That part of the podcast, and figured I'd give it a go myself. So, here I go. In 1990, my dad relocated our family halfway across the world to Singapore for business work reasons. I was in middle school and was very excited. Don't get me wrong, I was bummed to be leaving my friends in the States, but eager to see the world. It didn't take long for the struggles of making new friends and finding my way in a completely different culture and world to settle in. Feelings ranged from anger, sadness, isolation, etc. Like most teenagers, I turned to music to cope with and channel my angst. Guns N' Roses, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Violent Femmes, and Metallica were my drugs of choice at the time. Over time, I found my groove with making friends and settled into my adopted home, which I grew to love immensely. At the time, the early 90s, American expatriates lacked exposure into what was going on stateside with music. To address this void, my cousins would fill VHS tapes with hours of MTV and ship them over. They're so excited about Singapore.
Well, I know, and they haven't been on the show in a while, so...
I know. I think Amanda just walked in.
I love their enthusiasm.
See if they get through it. All right. Are we good? No?
Nope. That was amazing. Get through it? Nope.
Oh. Yeah, that's better. All right, sorry. She was locked out. So they were going
It
nuts.
sounded like you were getting attacked by a 60s robot. What was that noise that was going on there for a minute?
That was the phone ringing.
Oh,
Because she couldn't get in.
Gotcha.
Over time, I found my groove with making friends and settled into my adopted home, which I grew to love immensely. At the time, the early 90s, American expatriates lacked exposure into what was going on stateside with music. To address this void, my cousins would fill VHS tapes with hours of MTV and ship them over. Remember, this is pre-email, pre-internet. Magazines, fanzines, and trading mixtapes were our source. As soon as a package would arrive, it was a must-watch viewing event. The call would go out and my friends would flock to my house where we would sit and watch hours of videos. It was on one of those tapes where my friends and I saw the videos for Hunger Strike, Alive, and Even Flow. Who the fuck are these guys, I thought to myself. Their look, passion, sound, etc. was so unique and resonated with me instantly, like a quote-unquote fist to the jaw. There was a sense of credibility that they had above others. I immediately went to a record store and picked up 10 on cassette and CD. I wore that album out. I clearly remember playing 10 on repeat throughout my house on a boombox. My mom walked up to me and asked what I was listening to. I gave her the basics. She asked if I got tired of listening to the same album over and over again. I told her, not at all, these are my Beatles. She immediately understood, smiled, and went her way. Shortly thereafter, Versus released, and then Vitalogy. Those first 3 albums, holy shit, cemented them as my go-to and my favorite band. Frustration set in early when I realized that I'm going to have 0 opportunities to see them live. Who the hell is going to make their way to Singapore? And then an awesome stretch of concerts came our way. The music gods smiled down on us. My dad made it a priority for his admin to ensure that my friends and I always got tickets. He knew how important music was to me, as it was to him. Remember, back then you had to call to get tickets, no internet, and they'd go on sale while we were at school. Check out these concerts I was able to catch as a teenager in Singapore. Metallica on the Black Album tour. And he says now he listens to Metal Up Your Podcast thanks to us.
Oh, sweet.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah. REM in 1995 on the Monster tour. And Pearl Jam with Mudhoney in 1995, the Vitalogy tour. Smashing Pumpkins in 96 on the Melancholy tour. I mean, that's... Man.
Hell yeah, man.
Those are some epic fucking tours.
I would
you know?
kill to see any of those shows.
Yeah, definitely. Pearl Jam continues to be my favorite band and a staple in my life. My wife, who is not a big music fan, has come along for the ride, and my kids love their music. My son, who is 8, could listen to Corduroy on repeat. I'm teaching him the chords on his guitar. Smile from ear to ear whenever he plucks that intro. Thank you for your efforts and putting yourselves out there. Looking forward to future episodes and seeing where the podcast goes. Jim S. from Boston.
Right on. Thanks, dude. Appreciate the story, man.
Yeah, I love the idea of getting, a VHS with all the stuff on it, or like just getting random magazines with different stuff in it and getting all his friends together and watching this stuff.
Hell yeah.
And I mean, because that's kind of what we did here too in the U.S. You know what I mean? I would
absolutely. I did the same thing.
Mix tapes of different bands on MTV and stuff. So, but for this guy, it was probably few and far between. Where I was doing it every day, but
sure,
it's just kind of cool that it's the same. He was kind of having the same experience that we were, just in a different time.
Yeah, a little bit more isolated, probably.
Right.
But, yeah. Well, thanks again, Jim. Appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, very cool.
All right. So I've got one from our friend John Farrar here. He says, Brad Squared, the podcast gets better every week. I actually look forward to Mondays now. I don't go back to the Temple record often, but I enjoyed hearing your takes on it. All right. He says, so much to say about PJ20. It ran in Atlanta at an art house theater for a couple weeks, and I saw it there twice when it came out. You mentioned one of my favorite parts. Stone talking about Eddie during the Temple session, saying our guy's pretty good too. Yeah, I love that part. Then he goes to talk about the Kurt and Nirvana content a little bit from PJ20. He says, you guys talked a lot about Kurt and Nirvana, and rightly so. It would be interesting to explore that more. Ed around the campfire saying he thinks about Kurt from time or in times like that, thinking he would have enjoyed this. Saying that Nirvana's ethics influenced PJ. Ed says something about if we're good today, it's totally because of him. And after Kurt's passing, I think felt like he had to carry the mantle and live up to the high standard that was set. And then I hadn't actually heard of this book. He says there's a book called Your Band is Killing Me about band rivalries, and there's a PJ versus Nirvana section that he's been meaning to read, which I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, I would too.
I don't know, man. Like, I was thinking about that whole Nirvana Kurt section in PJ20 the other day, and I totally understand where it comes from and all that kind of stuff, but I just feel like, to me, and I kind of felt like this at the time too as a kid, I kind of felt like Kurt was just being kind of bratty and immature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now that I'm
Yeah.
older, it definitely seems like that. And I love Kurt Cobain. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not about that, but it's just like, and I don't know that I realized, I mean, I did realize it, but Eddie tended to always kind of take the high road, I feel like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, we
I mean, he
never
was
really
honest,
heard. Yeah. We didn't hear too much from the Pearl Jam camp regarding, like, I hate Nirvana, you know?
Yeah, totally.
But
Well-
I think we talked about it last week. I think a lot of the majority of stuff that everyone knows or thinks they know come from the media, you know?
Sure.
And they kind of twist everything just for clicks nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, all right, well, thanks, John. Appreciate the email, dude. Who you got next, man?
And one of our patrons wrote in, Andrew Plath. Hey, Brad's just caught up with the Pearl Jam 20 Part 1 episode. I remember watching this movie when it came out on Netflix. I don't know how many times I watched it. At that time, my friends and family did not understand why I loved Pearl Jam so much. So, like a rational human being, I forced them to watch this movie. I love that line. The reactions were mixed, but I've always viewed this movie as a love letter from the band to the Pearl Jam community that stayed with them through everything. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Angry email incoming. The first part of this movie always makes me angry. Not at the band, but how this band has and is treated in the mainstream. This BS argument that because they're famous, they can't complain about being famous irritates me beyond belief. And it still happens today. For example, people losing their minds about the I know you're rich, but you can't deny me lyric in Can't Deny Me. The classic, oh, they're rich, maybe they should do everything for free. And how can Eddie complain about rich people when he's rich? I just paid X amount of money for tickets, etc. When I see in the movie how the band was treated and some of the shit people say about them now, blood rises on my Pearl Jam song rankings. So I agree
man.
with him, man.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I understand those feelings for sure, but I mean, I don't know, dude. It's like trying to fight that fight. You can't win when you're in their
No,
position.
you're not
You know what I
gonna-
mean?
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
like,
you're not going to change people's minds.
because even with the Ticketmaster thing, you know, when they tried to do it their own way or whatever, it was way more complicated than they even realized it could be. And then even the
Right.
fans were bitching about that too. You know, so it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You just got to do what you think is right, I guess, at the time.
I mean, the only thing I can say, but that people, that, you know, most of them don't get this either, but these are real people just like you and me,
Sure.
you know, and they have this same kind of feeling. It's not like there's an evil conspiracy out there,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
know. I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but
I understand. Yeah.
all right. Well, there's one. He goes on to say about this episode, I really enjoyed Brad L. getting fired up in this episode. On Brad L.'s shit list, Daylight Savings Time, Andy Rooney, and Chris Novoselic. I agree, Brad L. Fuck them. Great stuff. Thanks for providing motivation while my PhD program drains the life out of me.
Oof.
Keep on keeping on, Andy.
Man.
Yeah,
Well,
man, you were
the
fired
PhD,
up.
Yeah, I was fired up, man. I forgot about that. I saw this email. I was like, oh no, what did I say? But yeah, fuck Andy Rooney twice, and
Yeah.
Chris. I like Chris. It's just back then he was kind of immature too, like Kurt. You know? I
Yeah.
don't know. Anyway,
They were kids, though.
absolutely they were. I'm not judging them. It's just it didn't. Those parts of their personalities didn't age well. You know what I mean? Like looking back on it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah.
Danny
Thank you,
K
buddy.
is next. He says, "I'm stoked. Hey, Blazy. Hey, Lions. Thanks for the shout out on the PJ20 episode. I was stoked to hear it, and it made my day. I was randomly laughing out loud again in a very public place, getting pretty strange looks when you guys brought up the name game again. You guys have got pretty good memories. That is, I've got a terrible.
I don't. Yeah.
We just remember you, bud. Danny K. I thought you both have forgotten about it by now. Thanks heaps for keeping us listeners all personally involved. It's what makes it a great show and an even better listen. I think it's about time I pen my Pearl Jam story and send it in to join the rest of them. I'll have to get onto that. Peace, Danny K. Yeah, man. Put that pen to paper. Send us that story. We need some more stories. And while we're talking about it, we need some more listener intros. Right?
Yes.
Yes. You okay?
I'm great.
Sometimes, like, when I ask you a question and then there's, like, 2 seconds of silence, I get really worried.
Well, because we're not together all the time. I'm not sure, like, am I supposed to respond or just go on to the next thing?
You should just, like, talk over me as much as possible.
Oh,
I think people would really
I'm not touching that.
What do you mean? Because I talk over you?
Yeah. What? All right, what's the next?
Let's talk about it, Brad.
No, you're good.
Just kidding. I don't care. Okay, where were we?
I've heard that complaint.
What?
Well, maybe not that you talk over me, but you
Talk too much?
don't let me talk. Yeah.
Oh man, I don't feel like that. Well, when I hear silence, I just go, okay. Well, I guess he's not gonna say anything now, even though I just asked him a question.
You didn't ask me a question.
Well, when I say things like, you know what I mean,
Oh, yeah.
and you just sit there, because that's also see, we're getting to work this out right here in front of everybody. Because the other reason why I do that is because I'm saying like, what you got to say about this, man?
Right.
And I go, you know what
Okay.
I'm saying? Do you?
Yes. We need more intros. Please send them in.
Oh man!
You just edit the last
No
60 seconds.
No, I'm keeping that in there, man. Calling me out.
Are you keeping everything?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Even the
I don't know, this is
pre-show?
No.
Oh,
Now we're really on a tangent. Okay.
yeah.
All right. So where are we? Oh, we just got done with Danny K.
Yes. Thank you, Danny K.
Thanks, Danny. You're up.
I'm up. Who we got next?
Chris Davis.
Yeah, see? Thank you. Chris Davis. Just finished the Vitology episode, and I'm at a loss of where to begin. I'm going to get on my fanboy high horse for a second. If we're going to refer to this record as one of the band's best, we can't simply skip over I Davanita and Stupid Mop as being throwaway tracks. It's over 10 minutes of running time. I Davanita may be the band's best groove track, and Stupid Mop is Revolution number 9. I get that they're not your prototypical rock songs, but these are the kind of tracks the band needs to bring back. The quote, we don't give a shit, unquote, mentality. We like it, so it's on the record. I used to not get either of these and skipped over them. I only recently started to appreciate Stupid Mop over the past few years. I challenge you to turn the lights off and get a good pair of headphones. They are the glue that hold this album together. Fanboy rant over. Chris Davis.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you.
What's your thoughts on
man.
those two tracks?
Now, what you
want me
think,
to go?
dude? Yeah, you
right.
go.
I mean, I like I Davanita, but I think just as, you know, like my favorite song or my least favorite song, like I don't even put that in there because it doesn't really count as just like a rock song. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I kind of get what he's saying too. I'd love some like instrumental stuff, but Stupid Mop is just too out there for me to take seriously. But I'm definitely going to check it out. It's funny because it came on my shuffle the other day, and I literally didn't recognize it. I'm like, what is this?
Oh, that's funny.
You know what I mean? Because I just haven't listened to it in forever. Like when I was younger and I'd make a mixtape, I wouldn't even put it on there. So,
Right on. All right, cool. Chris Davis, thanks for the email, man. All right, we got Matthew Massey next. He says, "Hey guys, in the past couple weeks I caught myself up on all the past episodes. Again, great work. It just sucks now that after I listen to the new episode on Monday, I have to wait a whole week for new stuff. But I always anticipate Monday mornings when I wake up to see what you guys are covering this week." He said he's listed, like, kind of did some bullet points. He said wanted to weigh in on a few of the quote-unquote controversies from past episodes. He says, number 1, Sirens, cheesy in a bad way. All right, he's on Team Brad B with that one.
I agree.
He says, number 2, Dissident, including the whiny guitar part. Good versus era rock and roll. Southern rocky guitar. He says, I don't like Southern rock, but not too Southern rocky. So I guess he's kind of like in between the two of us, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Number 3, he says, 10, great album, but verses through Yield are all superior. Binaural is close to. Of course, I agree with that. But Number 4, Ledbetter live is a love or goodbye letter to the fans. Studio is still fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
They're like going back and
Agreed.
forth here. Number 5, Mankind. Great song, though would have been...
Great song.
Yeah, man. Tell us how you feel. Though would have been even better with Eddie singing. Stone vocals are fine, but he is Eddie fucking better. See, I agree totally with that. Number 6, spoken word songs. I'm Open, Push Me, Pull Me, etc. These songs provide an interlude during the albums, which I love. Makes the albums unique. I don't seek these songs out to listen to on their own, but love them in the context of the album while listening all the way through. That's something that's kind of the same as what Chris was saying.
Right, and that's how I feel about them. I don't like ever go, oh, you know what I want to hear is Stupid Mop. But like I Davanita, I'll listen to it on the album if I'm listening to the album all the way through.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel the same way with you know, I'm Open or Push Me, Pull Me.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I've kind of gotten on the Chris Davis train over the last few months because I've been kind of finding or carving out the time to actually sit down and listen to records on vinyl, which kind of forces you to just, you know, I mean, you're not going to skip songs and stuff. And
Right.
I think just kind of at the end of a long day, they haven't like become my favorite songs or anything, but now I enjoy them as part of these records, whereas
Yeah.
I didn't before, you know. He says, number 7, Mad Season versus Temple. Love Temple, but Mad Season is the better album. Hands down. Woo! All right. Well, I think you're wrong, Matthew Massey.
Nope. No.
Nah, I'm just
He's
kidding.
got it.
Okay. We'll
He
see.
knows what's up.
Anyway, he goes on to talk about State of Love and Trust being his absolute favorite Pearl Jam song for the past 26 years. I'm not putting it at number 1, but I fucking love that song so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And he mentions
I do too.
something too about, he says, except that they play it way too fast live nowadays, which I agree with. But that's just part of the live thing. Everyone's getting all amped up and playing stuff really fast. I feel like we got a few conversations going about the Hunger Strike video as well, which he brings up. He just kind of says, it's so cheesy. I love it. He says it here. There's a shot of Jeff literally standing in a bush playing his bass. And then Matt and Chris are playing their instruments on the beach. And then it's nighttime. What a mess. What a beautiful, grungy, awesome mess. I agree. There's something kind of endearing about the how fucking
I think
weird it is.
someone else had wrote in saying like they made that video for $500.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, he says, take care and keep up the great podcast. Thanks so much, Matthew.
Thank you, Matt.
What you got next?
All right. Christy Borgman wrote in, "Hey Brads, just want to let you know that I've recently become a listener of your podcast, and I think you're doing a great job. I'm going in chronological order, and I just finished episode 8. When Brad B was talking about the feeling of seeing Pearl Jam in your favorite place on earth, I could totally relate. I grew up in Massachusetts and will always be a diehard Red Sox fan. When Pearl Jam played Fenway a few years ago, I had to be there. My favorite band at my most sacred place in the world. It was just magical." I totally agree with Wrigley, so I can't wait. That's going to be great.
Hell yeah.
I don't have anyone else that I can really geek out on Pearl Jam with, and I'm wicked glad you guys are doing this. She's definitely from Massachusetts.
It's true.
I can't wait to get the Temple of the Dog episode you recently did. I was lucky enough to go to all 5 West Coast shows. #blessed, which is a reference to episode 8.
Oh, way back in episode 8.
Was that like Let's Play 2? That had to be around that time.
Probably, yeah. Because we had, that was, probably like 2 months in, and we had just met each other in person for the first time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I remember Hug Explosion and Blessed.
Oh, God. Yeah, Hug Explosion.
being the hashtags. LOL, but seriously, I'm very fortunate that I was able to see them. Coming up towards the year anniversary of Chris, I'm still in shock and denial. Anywho, keep up the great work. Best regards, Christy Borgman.
Thanks so much, Christy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Man, all 5 Temple shows?
I know, man. That's insane.
Whew. Yeah, man, I wish I had gone to one of those. Just regret not going.
I get jealous of hearing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I went to a Spin Doctors show.
Oh, sweet.
God, what if that was really my, like...
Your comeback?
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah?
Like, that was the coolest... I saw the Spin Doctors, man. With the Blues Travelers. Same night.
Shit.
Alabama
Really?
Theater.
Man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, I bet there was
Stupid.
some...
I was in, like, 7th grade.
I bet there was some fancy people walking around that show.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. 7th
Spin
grade. I was
Doctors
in
and Blues
7th
Traveler in Alabama? Oh, my God.
Shit getting crazy.
Did they play, what was it? Two Kings? What's that song?
Princes? Two
Two Princes? Did they play it twice?
Yeah, dude. That's the first song and their last song of the encore. And the rest of the set, it's a 12-song set, but the rest of it, they just play Little Miss Can't Be Wrong over and over and over again. Until they close with Two Princes again. It was amazing.
So sad.
All right, cool. Moving on.
Yeah.
Let's
Thank
see
you,
here.
Christy.
Well, we're getting into some PJ20 stuff now before we kind of dive into part 2 of PJ20. You want to kind of walk us through? We had some questions that a few people asked about, so we're going to just have a general conversation, I guess.
Yeah, let me find this real quick so I can... I messed up. Well, yeah, Clay Davis had wrote in asking about, he wanted some little information about the singles party, the screening party.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why Pearl Jam and not some of the other acts like Alice in Chains or Soundgarden?
Right.
Because I didn't know this. I went back and looked, but Alice in Chains actually played that night, like 3 songs.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah, before Pearl Jam did. And the Lovemongers, which is Ann and Nancy Wilson, right? Mm-hmm. That's like their band. They also played, I think, just one or two songs. So they did actually have like, more bands playing. Plus, I don't think it was. It wasn't like a concert. You know what I mean?
No.
It was more like a party,
a party
for like movie people.
For rich people. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, they really blew that one out. Damn. What else you got?
Well, let's see. That was Clay. Chris Davidson had wrote in asking about he kind of was talking about how he wanted to know why Cameron Crowe didn't really mention like No Code or Yield, like specifically. They didn't really go into that,
Right.
And looking back on it, he didn't really mention any of the albums. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't the whole movie is not focused on like any one specific. Yeah, it's more just like their journey the last 20 years.
Well, it's just like, example being because they did talk about binaural, but the reason why they talked about binaural specifically just a little bit was because that was when Mike was having a really hard time, and so he kind of talks about that. You know what I mean? It seems like as far as the records, it's just just what's really pertinent to the story they were telling.
Yeah.
So, which I would love if down the road there was a more. I mean, I know I talked about this in another episode, but a more, I don't know, just kind of traditional documentary that was like a running down a dream kind of thing, like Tom Petty. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would be cool to see some of the, I don't know, like never before seen footage of them in the studio for each album.
Sure.
I know there's probably not a lot of that stuff that even exists.
I bet there is. I bet there's
but
tons.
I mean, there's got to be more stuff.
Yeah, but they, they keep that shit on lockdown.
Yeah.
So, was there anything else?
I think a few people, including our buddy Patrick Bagel, just kind of in general were asking about, just making the comment, really, just like we did, that the drummer situation was just not really, they did not go into that,
No.
I'll read what Bagel said. He said, ironically, it's the drummer's thing that was a head scratcher in Pearl Jam 20. Crowe did a pretty good job profiling the band, and in general, I liked his approach, which was to get at each of the members separately. So maybe it was Dave A and Jack did not want to be involved, but I think they kind of glossed over those elements a touch. And I totally agree with him. I mean, we talk about it on the show, but I wish they would have gone more into all the different drummers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of strange. Oh, it's not strange. It makes total sense in a way, but I
don't know, dude.
It's just not the type of movie they were trying to make. Even though I feel like, I want to, and it's weird for me. It's not like I want dirt or something. It's just like I want to know. I don't need to know details or whatever, but just a little bit more. Not only about why it seems like they couldn't keep a drummer until Matt Cameron, but also those guys musically added so much to each of the records they were on, Well,
I get what you're saying, that they weren't going for that kind of movie. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is like they weren't going for like drama. But to me, like they still get around, it seems like they still get along with Dave Cruisen and Jack Irons. I could see if they didn't want to talk about Dave A or have him in the movie.
Right.
But those other two dudes were a big part of the band, and it seems like they're all kind of still on good terms.
Sure.
It would have been interesting to see those guys talk about their time in the band.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing I miss. Like, I want to hear Jack talk about stuff. I want to hear.
Right.
I mean, Matt was there, but or at least play some more, representative interview footage from some of the Dave A's interviews. But
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
something. But man, that little 30-second clip and that's it.
Yeah, and it could. I mean, the last thing I'll say about it too is it could have just been a matter of, well, we got to make this. It was a 2-hour movie, so they had some sort of time goal, and it's like, well, if we attack the drummer thing, then we really have to go into all of it,
Yeah.
and that could be 50 minutes extra.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And they might have
that's
just
true.
been like, this isn't part of the story we're telling this time. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel like that might be a good guess, but
Yeah.
who knows? All right, cool. Is that all the emails? We did it.
Yeah, we did.
Hell yeah. So if you guys want to get in touch with us, our email address is singlepodcasttheory@gmail.com. You can search for us in all the social media places on the interwebs. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're on Reddit. We're on the porch, YouTube, all that good stuff. And, oh yeah. Thanks so much to our patrons. Obviously, we had quite a few write in this week, so we really appreciate that and all of their support. If you would like to support the podcast, you can. You can go to patreon.com/singlepodcasttheory. That's Patreon. It's just kind of a fun, cool way that we've just recently gotten off the ground to kind of help support the show going down the road so we can expand it a little bit. And that's it. That's all the housekeeping shit. Are you good?
We got some new patrons. Speaking of
Sweet.
Patreon,
We got a list.
yes, Dan Waters, Al Frazier, and Mork.
Mork and Mindy. Nano. I got that right, though, right? That was totally
Yeah,
Mork.
you did.
Damn,
Yes,
I'm good.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was reading his last name as I was saying his first name.
Gotcha.
Mark Normandy.
Gotcha. All right, so go through those names one more time.
Yeah, new patrons this week: Dan Waters, Al Frazier, and Mark Normandy. Thank you, dudes, so much for supporting the show. It really, and to all our patrons, it really means a lot to us.
Absolutely. It's really humbling, and it's pretty amazing. So thank you guys so much. All right, are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's get into this week's topic, part 2 of Pearl Jam 20. So we kind of left off last week, and Brad and I had talked, and we realized there was a couple little moments that we left out for that part 1 episode. What was in chronological order, which was first? The Lollapalooza or the brother/daughter songwriting part?
What? The first thing was they do a
The
whole
rafters.
montage, of Eddie climbing up in the rafters and jumping into the crowd and stuff, and they show Pink Pop.
Right. Well, and that's one of those things where I don't know why it took me this long to kind of think of it in this light, but Jeff and Stone, had just gotten out of a band where they lost their lead singer.
Right. Right.
And then they've got this guy that's literally, 100 feet in the air hanging from lighting rigs that are not intended to hold human beings swinging from them like chimpanzees.
Right.
I'd be kind of
Yeah.
pissed.
Yeah.
I'd be like, man, hey, bro, I love your vibe, but you got to fucking bring it down a notch.
Yeah.
Don't die.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well,
Good
isn't it?
God.
I think it's Stone that says that. Like, he says something about like we could have lost our singer, and I don't know if I could have handled that like at that point in my life.
Sure.
Which I took as referring back to a year and a half ago, the death of Andy.
Sure. That's heavy shit, man.
Yeah.
But then we did get to see that cool moment in the in the back lounge of the tour bus with Stone and Eddie working out. At the time, it was brother, but what would
Right.
become daughter.
I think I got the theory to make that part work. With I come in one earlier than I normally do. So I still do 4. So it almost felt like it didn't. It almost kind of always felt like it did 1 too many or something, but it didn't like complete itself. Let's just do it one more time.
A lot of my job is taking what they bring and turning it into something. Okay, this is a chord change, this is a melody. Okay, but what does that mean? Where am I? If I close my eyes, where am I? What does this music mean?
What did you
Yeah.
think about that as I don't know. What did you think about that little section?
That in the van or the bus.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that kind of stuff. It just puts you, like, you know, when you're, I don't know. When I first saw it, it just was like kind of like a fly on the wall. Like, it puts you into that moment of just two dudes singing a song on a bus. You know what I mean? It kind of humanizes them, and I love that kind of stuff.
Well, and getting to see that moment where it actually went from just being this guitar part that Stone had probably had kicking around for a while to actually turning it into a song.
Right.
It's like that is captured, and that's so cool, you know?
Yeah.
Getting to see how they did that. And that for me is one thing that I'll say this the right way. I think this is a great movie. Absolutely. But it is a movie. I mean, it is a doc, but it feels more like a movie. And I hope that down the line that there's some Pearl Jam version of like the Beatles anthology, or, you know, Running Down a Dream, Tom Petty, The Heartbreakers. That's like a 4-hour documentary, and it's like fucking studio footage with the producers, with label people, with it's like the whole bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
More like a true kind of like get into the facts, because what some would consider minutia. Those really long form documentaries on bands. I hope something like that comes out at some point.
Yeah, because this is going to sound weird to you right now, but I'm just going to say it. Mm-hmm. So just go with it.
Okay.
You know, one of our emails earlier today was brought up this point that, like, he doesn't cover like No Code or Yield.
Yeah. Yeah, they just
like,
get little mentions.
It doesn't even. I don't even know if No Code. I don't remember No Code coming up at all.
Hey, No Code comes up, and it's just for a second, and he said, and it's literally Eddie just kind of saying, that's when he was talking about the stalker issues, that's why he felt like he wanted to get impersonal with No Code.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was seriously about it. Like, you could totally miss that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I don't think they talked about Yield at all, did they?
I don't think so. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched it a few times in the last couple of weeks. I don't remember. I mean, they play some of the songs off of it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's crazy. But like getting back to what you were just saying, like, yeah, I'd love to see a 4-hour version of Pearl Jam 20. You know.
Well, it'd be cool to have, and again, like for me, the reference is the Tom Petty doc, which is the band is a part of it. Like they do interviews for it and the whole deal, but it's not necessarily Tom Petty making all the decisions on content, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And in that way, it's more feels like a more real, quote unquote, documentary.
Yeah.
Than this one does, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not just like, again, I love this movie, but it's just there's this other kind of documentary, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe someone that's not so super close with the band.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it in a minute, but things like you don't gloss over the drummer situation.
Yeah.
In real documentary. You know what I mean? And I'm not slagging them off for doing it. I understand that's just not what this movie is, getting into all that kind of stuff. But
well, I see a lot of people and myself compare well, we'll get to that in a minute, the drummers thing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right, well, let's kind of pick up where we left off. If you're kind of have been watching PJ20 to kind of not follow along, but since these 2 episodes are about PJ20, it's around the time where Eddie is on stage at a sound check and he starts playing the guitar parts of Immortality. But it kind of gets into them having the conversation about, you know, Ed losing his anonymity, and I think he even makes a reference in there about, you know, wanting to be kind of like a faceless band, a Pink Floyd, he used that reference, kind of band where you don't so much think about them as personalities, you think of them as this kind of musical unit, you know what I mean? Or like Sia, always wearing some wig that covers her face or something like that, you know? But it's when he's walking, they've got footage of him walking around, I don't know what city it is, but he's got that fly, the fly
mask
thing
giant,
on.
Yeah.
The thing's fucking huge.
Yeah.
But that is, I mean, that has to be a huge head fuck to be that type of personality and have your life under like this inaccurate microscope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. That would drive me insane. Could you deal with that?
No. I can barely deal with getting emails of people praising us right now. You know? So
you're just lying in bed at night, wide awake, with your eyes open.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine having people. I mean, I'm not complaining. The emails we get are awesome.
No, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
But we're not getting a fucking millionth of what Pearl Jam got, and especially Eddie. You know.
Well, and that's the whole.
Everything we get is nice. Everyone's really nice to us. But I mean, you get, you know, people writing these articles and people saying that you're just a whiny millionaire rock star and hearing that kind of stuff all the time and people in your face all the time, and you know, I couldn't imagine that.
The introvert in me would end up like fucking, I don't know what I would do. I'd lose my mind. But
yeah, turn into a hermit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't have any of those problems. I kind of do that anyway. So could you imagine?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this kind of moves us into the Vitology era, and their little. I like hearing Stone being the one talking about Eddie writing more, and how he was kind of like, "No, I'm the guy. Just let me do this thing that I know how to do, that kind of got us here."
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, going into Eddie not being able to be anonymous anymore, that's where they kind of go into that conversation about, like, how do they keep this going, and and Ed Eddie trying to figure out a way to have some sort of control on what gets put out or how he's presented or the band's presented or whatever, you know?
I think my favorite part of this section is Stone talking about how him and Jeff were kind of fighting to see who was going to be in control of the band, and then all of a sudden they both realize, well, it's Eddie now.
Right.
You know,
neither one of us.
Right. Yeah. While we were fighting each other, this dude came in and pretty much took over, you know?
Yeah. Well,
but yeah, you're right. It is good to hear Stone saying these things, because it kind of makes you think, I'm sure it was dramatic at the time, but
Sure.
obviously now they're over it,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
they've kind of fallen into their roles. So it's good to hear him, you know, just speaking that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, so this is how all around they talk about is the first trip to Australia. There's some footage of Singapore, I believe. They're playing Last Exit, which kicks ass.
Yeah, that's a great version.
Yeah. But they also, like, this is kind of like flowing its way into, because Jeff was saying that how they were kind of asking themselves questions like, how do we make this work long term? Like, how are we going to be in a band that lasts or whatever? And that kind of, you know, enter Neil Young, right?
Right.
As like their first positive father figure kind of influence in their life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
doesn't that how it feels to you when they talk
Oh yeah.
about it?
Well, Eddie even says, like, I had a bunch of crazy adults in my life, so it was nice to have Neil enter his life and be a good, you know, influence as an adult influence.
Oh, right, not just a peer or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that process too, and I think what they were trying to portray and through this kind of like plot line in the movie is just like all the things that they were really unsure of at this time and kind of freaking out about. It's like Neil Young had all the answers. Like Mike talking about, which also kind of alludes back to what Neil had said about Kurt Cobain earlier. You know, Mike talking about how Neil just always did what he wanted. So he was always kind of quote unquote up and down. Sometimes he's playing huge festivals and then he's playing clubs, but then next time he's playing in theaters, and it's just all about not worrying about that shit and just playing, you know, which sounds so simple, but I would imagine that if you're in the middle of all that craziness, it's hard to put into practice. Like, how do you know when to say no to things, or when you're being a dick, or maybe you're not being a dick, but you're being portrayed by, you know, people in the press that you are a dick. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that stuff's crazy, man.
Well, and that goes back to the wanting to be anonymous, because I feel like I'm sure there was multiple times where Eddie or someone else in the band, their words got twisted. So even though they might have given an interview thinking, oh, this will be good, then it gets twisted all the wrong way, and they still come out looking like a dick.
Yeah, it's now I'm gonna sound like a dick, but it's funny. Like when you get interviewed, like I was interviewed for something, and this was years ago, and I kind of knew the journalist that was interviewing me, so I felt a little bit more comfortable, I guess, than someone that I just straight up didn't know. And she was writing this article for this magazine, and we were talking, and she's like, well, what's some just like basic facts about you? And I was joking around. Now, some of these are actually true, but I was joking around, and I was like, well, I really love crossword puzzles, and like I kind of went through one of those lists, and I do crossword puzzles every day, but it wasn't a serious answer. So then the article comes out, and there's a picture of me and a little thing in the bottom of the picture that's like literally like Brad enjoys crossword puzzles, and I'm like, See, it was this small little thing where I'm like, oh, like that is nothing, but it totally gets represented in this completely different way from the conversation that I had with someone.
Yeah.
Right. And that's nothing that's like, that hurts me. It's an innocuous example of take someone as small and as insignificant as me and seeing that in one interview versus, you know, them getting asked to talk about themselves nonstop for years.
Yeah.
You can't get it right.
Yeah.
You know, they did the right thing. They just kind of walked away from all that shit, which I'd like to think that I would have had the balls to do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
What do you got to say about that? We've never really talked about Ticketmaster, you and I.
No. I mean, it was crazy when all that was happening. Like, as a fan of Pearl Jam, and that stuff seemed like it was such a huge deal. Like, Pearl Jam is suing Ticketmaster. And all these years later, you realize, like, there was a lot bigger problem. And Pearl Jam was just one small part of this case against Ticketmaster. But the media portrayed it as, like, Pearl Jam is taking them on. And that's not, again, what we were just talking about. That's not exactly what was happening, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the funny thing too is that, you know, I was watching this movie again, and Leslie was in the room, Leslie and Aiden were in the room, and this part came on, and it shows Stone at the with Congress or whatever the committee was, and
the hearing,
yeah, and he says he's talking about kids having to pay $30 for a ticket, and Leslie just like under her breath was like, if he only knew then,
right?
You know,
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
not getting into a Pearl Jam show or anything equivalent now for less than what, 100?
Yeah.
Is that high?
No, that's about right. I mean, I think the
there's some tickets that are 300, and there's probably some that might be
Right.
75, but like on average, you're spending
Yeah.
a chunk of change, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, after fees and everything, yeah, it's
Sure.
at least 100.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, maybe that's why I don't go to shows as often anymore. Just in
Yeah.
general, it's just like, I mean, I don't mind. It's not that I mind paying money, but you know, especially
It
from the
is-
artist perspective, does it have to be that much money, or is most of it fees? I've never looked into it, but
Yeah, I mean, it is weird in this case with Pearl Jam because their ticket prices are so much more than most bands.
right.
And I'm not complaining either. I'm not rich, but I find a way to do it to pay for them.
Sure.
It's not. I mean, it's easier to see some other bands like Ghost is coming to Nashville this summer, and I think those tickets are like $45 or $50. You know.
Where are they playing?
What is it? Some theater.
Okay.
T-Pack.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on.
Yeah, you want to go?
T-Pack. No, I'm good. I'm just kidding. Maybe we're due for a hangout.
Yeah, dude, I love Ghost. Those guys are. Oh, I love it.
I never heard of.
Bullshit.
Never.
Ghost?
I'm kidding.
Okay, thank you.
So this kind of gets us into, you know, them also learning a hard lesson on how hard it is to put on a tour. You know what I mean?
Oh, God, yeah.
Because that was a logistical nightmare, it seems like.
Yeah.
Counterfeit tickets, dealing with weather, security, all that stuff, man.
I mean, I don't remember the exact details, but I went to one of those shows in '96 in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, right.
And I seem the biggest takeaway I can remember is it was very complicated to get tickets. You had to like call an 800 number and like I want to say leave a message, and then they sent you like a code, and then you had to send in like a check or money order with that code on it. Something like it was crazy.
It was bonkers.
And since it wasn't Ticketmaster, the like phones, I guess Ticketmaster's got tons and tons of phone lines. Well, the ticket agency that they were using is just like a mom and pop type ticket place that's not used to this kind of volume. So the phones like died. Like, you know what I mean? Well, it's not that they were busy. Like you called and the phones just nothing would happen. Yeah. 'Cause they it's like crashing a website.
Right.
Well,
it just seems like overall it was just, there was not, I mean, that's the thing that something like a Ticketmaster provides is basic infrastructure, which they didn't have anymore by kind of circumventing the whole Ticketmaster scenario. Right. So, yeah.
And the show that I went to was on a minor league baseball field.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Guns N' Roses show in Birmingham years ago. I didn't get to go, but it was at the racetrack. Because that's all. I guess that's all we had that was big enough, right. And it had just fucking rained like crazy, and it was just a giant fucking mud pit.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
Well, this was Florida in October with a hurricane looming.
Right.
So it rained and rained all day until 5 or 6. So the doors open, they let us in. And it's just mud because it's a baseball field that's been rained on all day.
Right.
Then the sun comes out, and now it's fucking muggy and hot as a motherfucker. So it was just, yeah. Great show.
Well, sure, I bet. Yeah. Well, and the one thing before we kind of leave this, like there was one committee member, I don't remember who it was, I didn't write it down, but actually asked a good question, which was, something to the effect of, do artists have the right to control their art or their product or however you want to put it? And his feeling was that, yes, you do. And we're not going to kind of unpack all this, but just a little bit we've talked about it, it's obvious that that's really hard to balance.
Yeah.
Especially when you've gotten that big.
Yeah.
It'd be nothing for me because, I could sell out a show of 50 people probably. You know what I mean? But
yeah. Well, it's interesting because, I see both sides. I love Pearl Jam for taking the stand, and trying to do this and trying to save the kids the $5 in fees.
Sure.
Because now, flash forward 20 years, and shit like StubHub is out of control.
Oh, that's a whole other factor that they didn't have to deal with in that way.
Yeah, But it kind of parallels with like Metallica going after Napster.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because, what happened is people just steal music. But, I also see, like, Ticketmaster is, like you just said, they do provide infrastructure and, making things easier for everybody.
Right.
But, the thing that rubs me is, like, they just add these fees and you don't know what they're for.
Sure.
And it seems like lately they've gotten like back then it was like $5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But now it's like there's a $3.50 processing fee and a $10 convenience fee and a $10 shipping fee, and it's like a stamp is what, 50 cents?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no,
they add all this shit on. So I don't know.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, so let's move on to Stone's Basement.
Yeah.
Right? Which I thought was funny because I just learned that I am Stone in this band as far as keeping stuff. Like I don't keep anything as far as like, and I should. It's all somewhere, but like some of my friends that are, work in the studio a lot or make records or write songs, like they have all the shit that they've done somewhere together. And for me, if someone was like, hey, I need you to give me everything you've ever done, I probably have most of it, but it would take me a week to go through 3 different hard drives and find copies of all this stuff. Which is like Stone, where he's like talking about how Jeff has everything. And he's like, as long as I'm still friends with Jeff, I can just ask to borrow it from him. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. As long as we maintain a friendship,
right.
It's there.
Well, and also Stone's got the Grammy. He found the Grammy down in the basement.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, this is definitely the funniest part of the movie. His coffee cup from Mexico.
That looked like the same coffee from Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
From whenever he got the mug.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I've told you this before, but dude, you look like Stone. Like, I was watching this again, and like, you look like him for one. Your hair is very similar in this movie.
Yeah.
But like some of your mannerisms and like facial expressions, like I'm like, holy shit, that's Brad.
Interesting. I've never heard that before.
I'll
take it. I'm down with that.
Do you? Okay, so this is what, a 37th episode, 38.
I think this is 38.
This is 38. Do you save your notes?
Oh, no.
Oh.
If I have, well, that might change now, because something like covering these episodes with Pearl Jam 20, doing a movie is different. Like we talked about, like you kind of have to write it all out in order of the movie, whereas you kind of have a structure with a record because you're going to do track by track. I don't know. I have more notes for these than I ever have before, just because the order matters. I don't know that I'd take a whole lot of notes, to be honest with you. It's usually bullet points or something. You've got all yours, right? I know you've got all yours.
That blue notebook is still missing.
You still can't find it?
No.
Oh, sorry,
it's gone. It's gone.
We're gonna have
drives me out of my mind.
Everyone listening right now, could you please help us by looking for Brad's blue notebook? If you find it, email us ASAP. It's singlepodcasttheory@gmail.com.
It's somewhere between the triumvirate of Nashville, Birmingham, and Paris. So if you're in that Bermuda Triangle, it's a blue notebook
of ghost notebooks.
Yeah, ghost. Yeah. Oh man, it really. God, it's either gone forever, or it's like stuck in the car somewhere that I just can't.
I swear to God, I think it's still in your car.
Yeah.
Let's move on. All right, so they go into Monkey Wrench Radio, where they're playing "Do the Evolution." I love that whole set. And then awkward Eddie at the Grammys.
Hey, on the Grammys, I was having kind of a bad day. I was getting thrown out by security people for trying to sneak a cigarette in the backstage, and you couldn't go out because of all the photographers there. So that was part of it.
In the Black Circle, Pearl Jam.
I hate to start off with a bang. I'm going to say something typically me on behalf of all of us. I don't know what this means. I don't think it means anything. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I'm going to be a typically me and say something.
He handles shit like that well, though. I think by him saying that.
That's the cool thing. Yeah, he's self-aware of his like outspokenness.
Right.
It's not like he's arrogant, like he doesn't know that he's being a certain way. It's just people take it the wrong way and twist it into something else.
Well, it's just like him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction for Neil, when he talked about, he made the joke about someone thought they were really funny and put our table right next to Ticketmaster's table.
Yeah.
And that there was going to be a food fight,
Right.
He could have made that super douchey and weird and awkward, but,
yeah,
he was cool about it.
I love that he says, though, like, if there's a food fight, like maybe everyone can join us against Ticketmaster.
Right.
And it's just like the duality of that statement, you know, where he's jokingly saying a food fight, but he's in reality he's saying like everyone needs to stand up with us in our fight against them, you know.
Well, and he's probably saying none of you motherfuckers are doing it, which was a big reason why that whole thing failed, I think.
Yeah.
Wasn't because of the idea was bad. It was because no one jumped on board with him, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. But I do love, man, there's a lot, Hour 2 has a lot of kind of sweet stuff about kind of Jeff and Eddie's friendship, you know? Because the next interview footage after Eddie saying that was Jeff talking about, you know, some of his buddies were like, hey man, what's up with your bro? Like, why is he talking shit, whatever? And he's like, man, fuck you guys. He's right. He's like, and if I had the balls, I would have stood up there and said the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
I remember arguing with tons of my friends because my friends were like, man, what the fuck was your boy doing? Like, if he doesn't want to be there, then he shouldn't be there, and kind of all this stuff. And I was like, fuck you, man. Like, what does it mean? You know, like, are you fucking kidding me? You get an award for art? Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, if I would have had the balls, I would have said the same thing.
Which he brings up the whole, just the idea of winning an award for art, which is kind of weird, I think, anyway.
I do too, dude. I go back and forth with award shows and like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because, like, the pop culture part of me is like, yay, famous people. Like, I love these people. And it's so cool that they won. But then the, like, artistic part of me is like that. Like, how can you give awards for an artistic performance? Like, these people they're not even playing the same roles. So how can you say one is better than the other? You know?
Well, and that you don't even get your foot in the door for your art to be judged unless you've sold a certain amount, which seems very just contradictory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how many people, if you're really wanting to look at art and be objective about it, which you can't be because by nature art is subjective, but even then it's like, well, what about all the people that are doing great shit that just haven't sold as many records or haven't been on as many magazines or sell as many tickets to shows, you know? The whole thing, the whole structure of it is just, I'm like you. I love seeing people get, you know, rewarded for hard work or whatever, but at the same time, it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. But
yeah.
Anyway, I don't even remember what he said, but I just have in my notes again, fuck Andy Rooney again.
What would all these young people be doing if they had real problems like a depression or Vietnam? Do they work at all? Are they contributing anything to the world they're taking so much from?
God. I remember him when I was a kid.
Oh, I hate, my mom would watch 60 Minutes every fucking week. And I just was like, this is the most boring shit. But I remember that old prick being an old cranky prick every fucking week.
Right.
And he's just such a dick.
Tell me how you feel, man.
Oh, man.
Get it out.
Are any of these, what does he say? Are any of these kids that have it so hard giving back from the world that they're taking so much from? Fuck you.
Yes, they're creating something out of thin air and putting it into the world for people to enjoy. Yes, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they are,
God.
asshole.
Okay, well, I don't want to do a whole Rooney thing, but that was good. I liked your little attempted impersonation there, man.
What was his? He had like a catchphrase, kind of.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of that. I've tried to expel him from my brain, but I don't remember. I'm sure we'll think of it after we get done taping.
Yeah.
But then we get into the whole kind of like, you know, Eddie starts traveling separate from the band, doing his radio show, like, and man, I'll tell you what, dude, as someone that's, I mean, as we all know, that's spent a lot of time out on the road, man, when the rest of the band is, when it's routed for a bus or a plane, and then you're going to drive it, that's hard shit, man. That's some like road dog in it stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Because these are like, 10-hour drives between cities.
Right.
And then he's still got to perform, and he's doing he was definitely just trying to work something out in his head, because you're not healthy and do those kind of things, I don't think.
Well, I think Mike said, which, me just being a fan, not thinking about it, but Mike said, like, that time away from each other, the band is on the plane and Eddie's in the bus. Like, they were not only physically not together, but mentally they weren't sharing that time with each other, And I'm just like, oh.
Well, and the one that hit me hard was Mike saying, he was, again, I'll paraphrase, but he was like, are you embarrassed of us? Like, what is this? They didn't even understand why he didn't want to be around them. And was it even about being around them? You just don't know because there's no communication. Yeah. Another
Eddie's, it's just go ahead.
No, I was just going to say another example of like, how in the hell have they stayed together? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Eddie's just a different kind of cat, man.
So true. He's a different kind of cat. Oh, Brad.
But plus, at that point, they'd only been together for a few years. You know what I mean? Which
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes I forget that. I think that they hadn't been around that long at that point, and then we kind of have like calm everything down a little bit, and they kind of start going through like a Jeff montage and a Mike montage, and
well, what struck me at this point was Eddie starts talking about Jeff.
Ooh.
and how they were kind of similar artistically, and he says that's probably why we got teamed up in the early days and became such good friends, or something like that.
Yeah, they roomed together on the
roommates.
tours.
Yeah, and Eddie gets this look on his face, and he looks like he's about to cry, and he kind of like stops and like looks up into this, up into the skies, and you can see it on his face that he's thinking of those times.
Yeah, like they're all kind of like flashing in front of him.
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they're still together.
Yeah, no shit. That's true, man. Yeah. What, they kind of go through, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that we all know. They talk about Stone and Mike. They met in 7th grade. Mike was at that point where he was ready to quit music.
Oh, yeah, they show those
Shadow.
pictures. They show those pictures of him in Shadow.
With the long hair and the teased up hair.
So like 80s hair metal. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's another thing is like they all kind of, Eddie didn't know. Eddie was still looking for something. Jeff and Stone were handling what they thought was going to be their thing with Mother Love Bone crashing and burning. Mike had just gotten to the point where he thought he was going to quit because Shadow fell apart. They were all kind of like down in the gutter together, even though they didn't know each other, But I like Eddie talking about Mike, how he seems like it's like this spiritual, like he's channeling stuff when he's playing, Yeah,
and then boom, they go to Nothing As It Seems live.
Right. And then Chris,
and you see what Mike is, or what Eddie's talking about on Mike's face.
Man, he doesn't mess around. You got Chris talking about, Reach Down, how excited he was that he wanted this like big fuck you Neil Young 10-minute long guitar solo, and then he found the guy that could do it.
Yeah.
What he say?
His quote.
He's infected.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you got it.
No, just how he's like, this kid's got problems. We thought he was just this little nobody that never talked. And then he started playing guitar, and you're like, he's fucking good.
Well, he says he's infected.
Yeah.
I love that. And then Mike's
Yeah.
like, tell Mike what Chris said. He's like, yeah,
He knows
he's
me.
right.
He says he knows me. Like, yeah, that's me.
It's about right. And then we go into the only really bummer part for me. But like I said earlier, I understand that that's not what this movie is about. But they kind of do the jokey, silent film drummer recap or whatever.
Yeah, I counted. Well, I didn't count, but I looked at the time stamp. It's literally 75 seconds. And I think you should play it. I think you should play it right here.
Okay.
Eddie says, ask Mike about the drummers.
Ask me about the drummers.
He says, Mike will give you the drummers rap.
Oh, wow. Well, here we go. We started off with Dave Cruzen. It didn't work out. Matt Chamberlain, he didn't want to go on the road. He knew of a drummer named Dave Aberzies. It's very Spinal Tap of us to have this many drummers. Jack Irons.
Good drummer. Great look. Good drummer.
Jack was the guy that gave the tape that he got from Stone to Ed. Ed wanted to repay that favor and say, hey, want to come and try out? And we toured with him after we did Yield, and he played on that whole record. That's when it was starting to get too much for Jack. He called up and said that he couldn't tour. We already had a tour booked. Who can we call that can do that? Matt Cameron. Soundgarden had broken up, so Ed called him.
Hey, Eddie, what's going on? And he's like, hey, what are you doing this summer? Nothing. We need to leave in 3 weeks.
In 10 days, he learned 80 songs.
They had a list of 60 or 70.
Something crazy like that.
I would just sort of close my eyes, and I'd go like that, and I was like, okay, do I know that song? It's like, no.
Matt Cameron made us a better band than we've ever been.
It's like a minute and 10 seconds, and that's it. That's all they do is on the drummers,
And yet, when Eddie talks about it,
and most of it's Matt Cameron. Like half of it is the first 3 or 4, and then the other 30 seconds is Matt Cameron, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I don't know, dude. I mean, we know these guys still have a good relationship with Dave Cruzen, and I can't imagine there being any bad blood with Matt Chamberlain. So
everything's cool with Jack.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really just Dave, but
exactly. But this is. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, the thing that I find funny about them spending 73 seconds on it or whatever is that within that, Eddie talks about how important the drummer is, and it's like removing the heart of the band. It's like a heart transplant, like this serious thing, but they only spend 70-something seconds on it. You know what I mean? It's like, that seems a little contradictory, but whatever. It's cool. I honestly, because I remember watching this movie the first time, and before I hit play on it or whatever, I remember thinking, are they gonna tackle the drummer thing?
My thought was I can't wait. I can't wait till they tackle the drummer problem. Yeah. Because I want something, and we got nothing. And what I was saying before was I think I do this. I know some people online will compare this documentary to the Foo Fighters documentary, which the Foo Fighters one is really good. Mm-hmm. But man, you want to get into some drama about drummers, they get into it. They have some of their previous drummers on there, going into talking shit about Dave Grohl and I got kicked out and that kind of stuff. And it's
yeah, you know why? Because he is a better drummer.
Who, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
he's one of the best drummers ever.
Yeah, but he's not the Foo Fighters drummer.
Well,
I'm just saying, that Foo Fighters documentary does what we all wanted the Pearl Jam documentary to do as far as drummers. That's all I'm saying.
No, agreed. I get you.
And man, yeah, they didn't even mention. Or they mentioned their names, and that was about it.
Right. Seems kind of weird, but what else?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get into binaural world. What? I
was just gonna say the little insertion of Spinal Tap.
Oh,
in
which
that
one did they use?
It's when he's like, great drummer.
Oh, yeah. God, I love Spinal Tap so much.
Oh my God, greatest.
All right, so yeah, as you kind of mentioned earlier, they didn't really touch No Code or Yield, two of their best records, and I love Binaural, but I guess it's just because of what was happening at the time. But they kind of cover the Binaural era with, Mike talking about his Crohn's and pills and having to get help for that, and I don't know, just the general growing up of the band at that point, where they all kind of, because Stone's talking about they used to have those Lose Your Mind shows, but they were just all getting older and had responsibilities and, probably kids, and I don't know, they're just growing up.
Mike has a moment too where he's talking about that was a dark time for me with Crohn's and pills to, offset the Crohn's and then the pills, and he kind of looks up to the sky, you see on his face he's reliving some shit.
Yeah, man. Mike's always got something good to say. I've never heard him really in an interview kind of just be an idiot. He's always really thoughtful and kind of on top of shit,
Yeah. Well, being a roadie for Skinner will do that to
You're
you.
damn right, man. That'll really toughen you up. All right. Well, and then I don't know. I think one of the more brutal parts of the movie is the Roskilde section. They got Inside Job playing in the background, and they've just shown all that video footage. It's video footage of Eddie's face on the Jumbotron,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about all that. I couldn't imagine, when Stone talks about, you're standing there and they're pulling people over the barricade that aren't alive,
Yeah.
And you're just standing there.
Yeah. And he says, I think it's Eddie that says, we just wish that didn't happen.
Yeah, he just kind of talked about I just wanted to get out of there or something to that effect. And then Jeff, man, he said something about, that he hadn't felt that way since Andy died. I thought that was a pretty profound statement for him to make.
Yeah, saying he didn't know if he wanted to play anymore.
Yeah, was it Eddie? Because I think it was Eddie talking about how at that point everything became, pre-Roskilde or post,
Yeah.
And that if they had gone through their kind of the birth of No, coming out of the singles party shit show or whatever, that this was I think he said the beginning of what? What are we doing? What are we doing to support these families that have lost people at one of our shows? Or what are we doing just as a band in general, Because it's got to be one of those things where they probably never expected to be together that long.
Right, yeah.
I feel like unless you're just super naive, when you get into a band, it's not going to last forever.
Well, especially these guys, they had all been in multiple bands,
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm sure they had that feeling in the back of their mind.
Yeah. Well, I do love how Cameron Crowe kind of twisted all that shit, all that negative craziness with the Roskilde thing, and found a way to work it into them performing in Vegas in 2000 at the 10-year reunion show and doing Crown of Thorns, which I just have in all caps on my notes. So good.
Yeah.
Second Eddie starts singing, it's ooh, damn.
Well, and it's really interesting with Eddie talking about how Andy wanted to play those kind of shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're showing footage of Mother Love Bone playing a club and singing Crown of Thorns with the Pearl Jam version underneath him.
Yeah, sure.
And then Eddie says, in a way, he got to play those shows.
Yeah.
And then he's got that little smile on his face. And that's some weird, heady kind of stuff for me.
Yeah, I know,
but just talking about like time travel and like in your head, he was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I understand what you mean. Well, and I just like Ed saying, like, you know, Andy would have loved to play this place, or, you know, he's talking about the Garden. He's like, Andy would have tore this shit up, which is so true. And I love how they sync and kind of, well, yeah, they sync the Pearl Jam audio of that song up with footage of Andy performing in the clubs early on, which I just thought was a nice little touch. That was cool. And then I don't know why they went straight from that, not that it matters what I think, but into Bush Leaguer.
Yeah, like this real big high, and then down into let's bring it back down, controversy.
Well, just fucking getting booed.
Yeah.
I mean, those people were not... for the people that were booing, it wasn't a light boo.
No.
This was like...
No.
This is boo.
Yeah.
You know?
What did he say? 3/4 of the crowd were booing? Like...
Oh, God.
That's
so
that's
uncomfortable.
rough.
Well, Mike was talking about how there's a firefighter standing in the crowd in front of him, and he's just holding up his badge. It's like, oh my God. So uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know,
well, and when you're used to the complete opposite, it's got to be such a weird feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, dude. Well, like Jeff says, he's like, it's so great to be able to be in like a really outspoken band, you know?
Yeah. I just love that Jeff's like, I loved it. It was art. Like Mike is just like scared to death. And Matt too kind of had a look on his face when they're showing that footage. And, you know, Eddie's right in the middle. Like he gets it why people are booing, but when just Jeff saying like, I thought it was great. Like, yeah, he's the artist.
Yeah, well, that, and I think that there's something about, like, you wouldn't think so based on his personality outwardly, because I think of Jeff as so, like, he's like the sweet one. He's like,
right.
I don't know, the more soft-spoken one, but he's actually kind of punk as fuck. Like,
yeah.
In all these kind of situations, he's always been the one to be like, hell yeah, do that. Yeah. Go up there with a George Bush mask on and don't give a fuck about what anyone thinks, you know?
Yeah.
Because that goes back to that, and we talked about a little bit a couple episodes ago, I guess, but, you know, people getting turned off by political stuff or whatever, and that's fine, that's cool, but I don't know. I mean, Eddie's... I hate the word. It sounds so pretentious, but he's an artist, and that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't mean their music sucks, but.
Well, was it Mike saying like, well, this is what we wanted to say?
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, Mike and Jeff.
And
both said something.
Yeah, they go up there and they said what they mean with that song.
Right. Yeah, it was cool. Well, and then they go into Faithful, the only nod to Yield. Not the only one, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I remember thinking that. Where they talk about the set list. And I love
Stone.
Oh, you about to say the same thing? Go for it.
Just Stone wanting to play the hits. Like, come on, can't
He's
we
like,
play
we could fucking kill these people if we just played these songs. You know, I like how he sits back and like he's got a book in his hand. I guess Eddie, acting like Eddie, maybe. And he's like,
right.
No, we're gonna do this. They're all like, oh, we haven't played that song since the studio. Yeah, fuck it, bring it out tonight. That'll be great. I love it though, man. But it's what keeps I mean, someone talked about, I can't remember who, but it's kind of what keeps them going though. Like, lets them be themselves. They're not, you know, shoved into this kind of muscle memory kind of thing where they just go up and they know all the moves, they know what's going to kill. But they would have lost a ton of fans if they did that way.
Yeah.
I think their set lists are why their fans carried them through the years where, you know, everything kind of changed and it was boy bands and, you know, the backlash of the Seattle thing.
Yeah. Well, but I think it's around this point where they mention like, the fans some fans stuck with them and have stuck with them. And when I was watching this and he said that, I just like gave a thumbs up to the TV. Like, yep, I did.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I mean, even when there was a record that maybe I didn't like as much when it came out or something, there's never in my mind ever a point where I was like, I probably just don't like them anymore. You know, like they're one of those bands that I will continue to buy what they put out. And
yeah, there's a few bands here and there that I've, well, more than a few, but like I've been super hot on some bands and then they just kind of drop off. And some bands I do that with, but I come back to them.
Yeah.
But Pearl Jam has like never, ever waned for me.
Sure.
I mean, I've always kept up with everything they've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love their whole, because I remember when Pearl Jam came out and people that were older than me, which was not saying much because when they came out I was in like 7th grade, but I remember older dudes always being like, oh, it's just the fucking 70s, man. They're just ripping off the 70s. And I mean, I guess they are, because they are definitely, they sound like the 70s. But like,
well,
with
I
a new
always
thing
remember
to it, but
Howard Stern would call him a Jim Morrison clone, Eddie.
Ugh.
And I'm like,
no.
I mean, they both have a deep voice. Like that's it.
Yeah. Jim didn't make any sense. Whatever. I'm not a big Doors fan, but I hate. I do not like that comparison at all. That makes me very angry.
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect to Jim, but come on.
Yeah. Hey, can we talk about set lists real quick?
Yeah.
Like, why do like 99% of bands play the same set list every night?
Because they're scared.
I mean, is that what it is?
Yeah, dude.
I mean, I get like Metallica or I don't know, like Fall Out Boy, where they have a huge stage production, and it's like, the way I look at it is it's like going to see a play.
Right.
Like they have to do certain, like the sets have to all be timed to be the same way. But like, I mean, not every band does that. So most bands just get up there and play. But so why is the set? I mean, I would get bored playing the same exact set list every night.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think people are so worried, and I'm just guessing. I don't, obviously I can't speak for anybody, but just in the past with different artists or bands that I've toured with, and like I love making set lists. And I was lucky enough to have a couple artists that I played with that did what we're talking about. Like I wouldn't know, I had to learn a bunch of songs and just never know when I might have to pull one of those back out, because the set list would change a ton. I mean, other than maybe if there's a new record out. But I think for a lot of people, it's just a comfort thing. It's just like, okay, we know when we do this song, it always gets this reaction, so we got to keep that. And they kind of build this list of things that they know are going to kill. It's like what Stone was saying. But instead to get up there and play based on, like Jack White's a big one, a good example. Like with the White Stripes, they never had a piece of paper on stage. They just look at each other and call songs out based on how the night was feeling. Which, if you have the balls to do that, it's going to be better for everybody. Because it keeps you on your toes. You can't phone it in that way, That's why they're so fucking good, Brad B.
I just, man, I think there should be a better balance of songs for bands, so they don't play the same. Because I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, well, they have to cater to the crowd, but I mean, come on. If half the people only know the 4 or 5 songs from the radio, but the other half are super fans that know every song, can't you play, like, mix up the songs in between the radio hits instead of playing the same set list every night?
Well, here's a couple things real quick. So first of all, like what you're saying is exactly right, but the number one thing is that most bands don't have a catalog that's as strong as Pearl Jam's. Like, a lot of bands are lucky to have their, like, 3 or 4, maybe 3 contenders for a single, and then the rest of it is just kind of there so that there's an album for those singles to be on. You know what I mean? Like, whereas Pearl Jam, it's like you can pull all kinds of stuff out of their records. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of people don't have the catalog to have that kind of a show. But
yeah.
I like seeing Pete Townsend in there, and I love that old interview clip of Pete Townsend just talking about, I don't have it all written out or whatever, and maybe we'll drop it in.
Yeah.
But, just referring to the circus and how they're gonna, it was like unavoidable that the Who would eventually become a cabaret act of themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying that happened, but I love that he was already kind of aware of that.
We have to decide whether or not we're going to remain the circus act. In other words, doing what everybody knows we can do and what we know we can do, right? Until the band eventually turns into a cabaret act, which is inevitable.
It's ridiculous.
I love the fire in his voice too. Like he's he's pissed.
Pete's the deal, man.
Yeah. No, and that is just a cool little snapshot. I think it's Stone talking about how each member has certain bands that they love, and then they get to Eddie and the Who and show that clip, and then Eddie saying that was it Pete asked him to open,
and he's like,
come
no.
and play, and he's like, no, because it's like that's to me that's like Tom and Jerry. Like if Tom ever catches Jerry, like what's
I was like, where's he going with Tom and Jerry? That was awesome. Nice work.
Like if he never catches him, because if he does, there's no show.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't go on stage with my favorite band because then I have nothing to go on to the next day.
Sure.
Like I've been to the top.
Yeah.
And I love that he kind of puts that out there. Like, no, I said no.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, and of course, this gets kind of into the wrap up montage of the movie. We're just showing a bunch of clips and sound bites and
all the stuff with the fans.
Yeah, it's cool.
And there's that one girl saying like, that's why you go to see Pearl Jam, because it's different every night. And I'm just like, I love you.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Well, and that's cool. You would expect it, but it is cool to kind of wrap it up with, especially with the guys kind of talking about how grateful they can look back this far down the road, and they're just super grateful that they have each other, they have the fans, and, it's this kind of like organism that works, as far as like if the band's not feeling like they know where they are, they had the fans to kind of carry them along, and obviously the music is what carries the fans, and it's just this nice kind of symbiotic relationship, and they're old enough to kind of value that in a different way now. Not that they didn't before, but with age comes some perspective, I would imagine. So what else you got?
They go into Alive in Philly 09.
Yeah.
And since I've seen this movie, every time I hear Alive or I see them in concert and they play Alive, I think of this like incredible like time-lapse montage during a solo. They just show the band in different stages of their career, and it's just incredible. And the performance of that song from that night is awesome.
Hell yeah.
So
Alive's always awesome.
Yeah, man. I love it.
I can't imagine them being able to phone. Maybe they can phone it in. I don't know.
But I don't know.
It's a pretty big moment with the crowd,
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Well, did we do it, man? PJ20 parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think so.
We're gonna have to take a couple weeks off after this one. I don't even know what we do after this. felt like this is
the only one thing that I don't love is the credits where they're playing "Walk with Me" with Neil Young.
Oh yeah,
that's not my favorite song.
Oh, just real quick. There's this one thing I don't like. It's at the very end credits. But hey, I'm from Chicago.
What does that mean?
I have no idea. I just wanted to get Chicago in there somehow.
Just to pick at me about Chicago?
A little bit, yeah. I wish I could say it the way you say it.
How do I say it?
Chicago. It's the Chicago. And
Chicago.
the G is a very g. Chicago.
How is it? Say it again.
G.
Chicago.
Chicago. No, hold on a second. Hold on. Let me see if I can get it. Hold on. Chicago. No. Chicago. Chicago. Say it.
Chicago.
Yeah, it's about the back half of the word. There's something very special about the way you do it. I can't.
I don't have the accent, but I do say Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. That was a great podcast moment we just had.
What are we doing?
I don't know. We're getting out of here is what we're doing. Oh my God. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to. Oh, are you okay? What just happened?
Yeah, I'm great.
Oh, you forgot, didn't you?
I did not forget.
You son of a bitch.
I'm right here. I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready. All right. Thank you guys for listening. You can check us out. You can email us singlepodcasttheory@gmail.com. Look us up on the socials, Reddit, YouTube, the porch, all that good stuff. If you'd like to support us, that would be awesome. You can find us, it's patreon.com, patreon.com, /Single Podcast Theory. There we go. Cool. Now that we're ready.
Mr. Micro Machines over here.
I rattled that shit off. I'm an auctioneer. All right, here we go. All right. So that's it. We'll talk to you guys next week. Oh, my God. I'm Brad Lyons.
And I'm Brad Blazek saying you got to hold on to your time till you break through these times of trouble. I was ready.
You were ready. All right. See you guys next week. Later.
Yeah, thanks.
I died and you just said that. I died and you watched. I died and you walked by and said no. I'm dead.
That was hot. Fuck yeah.